Okay, let us review what we should have in a good paragraph. First of all, every good paragraph is going to start with what? What is that sentence right there in green? Yep, hopefully you recognize that as a topic sentence. And a topic sentence should be a pretty broad umbrella. See, that's my little drawing of an umbrella. It should be a pretty broad umbrella that all of the arguments are going to fit underneath. Now, what arguments are we talking about? Well, let's take a look here. I have two arguments, and in each case, the argument starts with the same type of sentence. What type of sentence do I have highlighted in yellow? Those are, in fact, claims. Now, what is the relationship? The claims should both fit under the umbrella. So, do they? The fact that George expresses concern for Lenny on the ranch, does that show he's protective? Yes. The fact that he goes to great lengths to guarantee Lenny's, safety in his death. Odd statement. But is he very careful to sort of protect Lenny even during Lenny's death? Yes. So both of these claims fit under this topic. So they both are examples of George being protective. And that tells you that this structure so far is looking pretty good. Now, what should you always end with? What is this bottom sentence here? That's closure. Now, if it's good closure, I should see a couple of different things here. First of all, I should see that it is going back to that opening topic sentence, and I can see it is right there. I should also see an intensifier. Are there any intensifier words here? Yep, undoubtedly. Most evidently, these words make it more intense. You're saying, absolutely, I believe what I said in the topic sentence. Do you have a closing transition? Right there, throughout the novella. So this really feels structurally like it's doing a good job. The only other thing I would look at in terms of organization would be the transition in the middle. Later in the story, it does tell me what the relationship is between the first argument and the second. So when I'm looking to grade organization, those are the pieces that I'm looking at. Next up, let's talk about content. Now, content is how good are the ideas. So let's take a look. I have a claim. Anytime you have a claim, what is the next thing you should have? What do you always need to back up a claim? And that is evidence. So the claim is it's apparent to the reader in the way he expresses his concern for Lenny on the ranch. So he is certain that trouble will arise, so he gives Lenny an escape route and clarifies he needs to stay away from Curly. Cited. Along with this, George takes the lead during the job interview out of fear that Lenny will be judged by the boss and in turn end up costing them the job. Now, if you notice, here the quote's not quite as strong because certainly I have better quotes trying to prove that he's trying to keep Lenny out of trouble. So that's not the best chosen evidence, but this evidence here does support this claim that on the ranch, he is in fact trying to protect Lenny. I also like that this person realizes that even though this evidence, the second sentence of evidence is summarized, even summarized evidence must be cited. So the evidence section here is looking pretty strong. What comes after evidence? Well, hopefully you remember that would be, commentary. And commentary always comes with reasoning plus a return to your topic. So let's take a look. George's words and actions are a direct result of him understanding that Lenny cannot survive through a certain situation on his own. This awareness George has causes him to feel obligated to be Lenny's caretaker and to give him advice, clarity, and assistance. First question, do you go back to that idea of protective? Because remember, you got to return to the topic. Yep, look what we have right there. Caretaker. So this is connected back up to the topic. So we have the return to the topic. Do we have a type of reasoning here? Well, let me circle something and you tell me if we have a type of reasoning. Looking at that, what type of reasoning do we have? Yep, that's cause and effect reasoning. So we do have a type of reasoning. So this first argument, because of course argument is claim plus evidence plus commentary. That's what makes an argument. So this first argument is really solid. So let's see how the second argument does. Okay, let us do some talking. First of all, in the evidence, does every single sentence that includes evidence from the book, is every sentence of evidence cited? Yes. So you can see that you've got that Steinbeck, that citation on every sentence. And in this case, the evidence, I would say, is even a little bit stronger because these words are definitely quotes that show a lot more danger. So these quotes seem to support that idea that George is going to go out of his way to protect Lenny even when he is looking at his own death there. So this evidence is actually stronger than we had in the first case up here, which is a little unusual because sometimes when I start looking at the second argument, kids sort of start losing track of what they're actually doing. So in terms of content, this is really looking good. Now, let's talk about the commentary. Commentary, remember, you got the R&R. The reasoning and the return to the topic. I've done a little marking here, so you tell me what type of reasoning do we have? Hopefully with the if, you spotted that the reasoning here is contrast. It's look, if he was careless, if he was just this average thoughtless worker, he would have just walked on. And so this is set up for some nice contrast. It doesn't quite follow through as nicely as I would like. I would love to have a second sentence here that said, look, if George was careless towards Lenny, he would have let him die the slow, agonizing death of the other men, specifically Curly, had planned. However, he doesn't. He steps up and he protects Lenny the best he can, and that's what proves that he really is Lenny's caretaker. He is Lenny's family. So when you're setting up contrast, the first half tends to be if this were true. The second half tends to be it's not true, and so here's what we get instead. And so it doesn't follow up quite as nicely, but certainly because that contrast is sort of obvious and I can follow it as a reader, I'm going to be okay with that. So the commentary here, I do have some nice reasoning. What word in this commentary takes me up to my topic sentence? Because remember, if my commentary is correct, I don't just have a form of reasoning, I have a return to the topic. What word returns me to the topic? Yep, that would be careless. So in terms of ideas, content, I really like what I've got going. I've got excellent citations on both halves. The evidence down on the second half, in this second argument, see, that's your second argument, because of course an argument is claim plus evidence plus commentary. The evidence in the second half is actually stronger than in the first. The commentary in the first half is stronger than in the second, but certainly content-wise, we are very, very solid all the way across. And because both content and organization are really strong, this paragraph really does prove, dude, George is protective. But that is not the only thing I graded on this time. One of the things that I said that I was going to grade you on this time was syntax. And syntax really just means sentence structure. And so what am I looking at? I'm looking at sentence beginnings. So when I look at the sentence beginnings here, I do not see repetition. Okay, sure, you got George here and George there, but those are pretty far apart. And I see that you're starting with a name, you're starting with a pronoun, you're starting with a pronoun, you're starting with a preposition, you're starting with a noun, that remember that's an adjective, you're starting with a pronoun, you're starting with a transition, with a preposition, with a subordinating word. So I'm seeing there's a good variety of sentence beginnings here, and I'm also seeing there's some nice variety in sentence lengths. So I have some sentences that are shorter and really pack some power, and I have some sentences that are much longer and really help the reading flow nicely. I also said that it was a requirement that you had to show me some sentence structures. So I need to see that you're using some of these structures I'm teaching you. Look right there. I've got a fanboys that is a compound sentence using a comma and a coordinating conjunction. I also have with the if, I've got a DC, IC sentence. So overall, between the sentence beginnings, the sentence structures, and the sentence lengths, I am very pleased with the syntax of this particular paper. Now, what's the last thing I'm grading you on? That element would be diction, otherwise known as word choice. And so when I look at the diction here, there is a lot that is really well done with the diction. So you've got some really nice words that are very high level and really fit well. You also have some words that maybe perhaps are not quite as good, that George, as Lenny's caretaker, gives him advice. Yes. Gives him clarity. No. Nothing gives Lenny clarity because he doesn't have the mental capacity to have clarity of mind. So that's an odd word choice. That would not be enough to keep you out of the very top category, but I have a lot of linking verbs. Far too many than I would expect for a paragraph of this length. And one of those linking verbs is, in fact, passive voice. So while this is still very good diction, this would not get the top category in terms of word choice or diction. So overall, what is it being graded on? It's being graded on content. This is very strong content-wise. The first half has okay evidence, but awesome commentary. The second half has awesome evidence, okay commentary. But in terms of content, this really does prove its point that George is a protective man. Second thing I'm going to be grading you on, organization. Organization was the first thing I showed you here, and that is your topic sentence. Do the claims fit under your topic sentence, your transition, your closing sentence? This is pretty much a home run in terms of organization. Next, syntax, sentence structure. So you have a lot of good stuff going here with sentence structure. I like the fact that I see compound sentences, fanboys. I see the DCIC sentences. I see a variety of sentence beginnings. All of that makes me happy. Also a variety of sentence lengths. And then, of course, the last thing I'm grading on is diction, word choice. And if this author were a little more careful with linking verbs, honestly, I think this paragraph would be a home run. As it is, I think if the runner puts a little effort in, they're still going to get a home run off this paragraph. This is nicely done. Okay, let's take a look at another paper, and let us start by talking about the organization. So, first question, what do you think of the topic sentence? The topic sentence is in fact strong. It is a good broad umbrella that other arguments are going to be able to fit underneath, so it's not too specific, and it's definitely the student's opinion. So they're bringing themselves and their interpretation of the story to the board. So the topic sentence is great. Now, what do you think about the two claims? Do the two claims fit underneath that umbrella of Lenny is innocent? The first one definitely does. Okay, it's evident that he's innocent during that first incident in weed. I can buy that. But that second claim, how he treats people, it's not a complete thought. And so while this claim fits underneath innocent, this one, I know what they mean, but this is not clear writing. And so this one is not a good claim. I know what they meant to do, but it's not a good claim in that it doesn't fully explain what's going on and how they see this fitting under the idea of innocence. What do you think about the transition in the middle? Yeah, that's awesome. I love significance transitions because they build it up to where the reader wants to keep reading because they're like, oh, well, I want to know what's going to be better than that. And so order of importance transitions definitely do feel nice. What do you think about the closing transition? Or not the closing transition, the closure. What do you think about the closure on this paragraph? Okay, it definitely does go back up to the topic. That's nice. You've got a closing transition, which is an unusual one, and I kind of like it being an unusual closing transition. And of course, most is your intensifier, not the best intensifier in the world, but the closure certainly is there. So overall, if I gave you a choice of best, good, okay, or a little bit rotten, how would you grade this organization? I would put it in the good, okay? I can see the organization. Now, I might say this might knock it down into the okay range, except I think that the problem here has more to do with the sentence structure and not having complete sentences than it does with the actual organization. So I would be between these two, but I think I would probably go with good. Okay, so what's the next thing I'm going to grade on? The next thing we're going to look at is content. So let's start with the first argument. And again, argument is claim plus evidence plus commentary. So when I look at the first argument, is the evidence specific in proving his innocence? Well, yeah, it's focusing on the fact that the texture of the dress, that's something that an innocent child cares about. If he were a sexual predator, he would not care about the texture of the fabric. So I think that is well-chosen evidence in the first argument. Does the first argument have good commentary? Well, first of all, what is commentary? It is reasoning plus a return to the topic. So in this first argument, what type of reasoning do you have going on here in the blue? Yeah, that's a comparison. It's going to compare him to a child. Does it go back to the idea of innocence? It actually does. When it talks about meaning no harm, that does connect up to innocence. So I would say that content-wise, this argument is looking really nice. Now let's go into the second argument. In the second argument, we are supposed to be focusing on how I'm assuming that Lenny is innocent, and you can see that in how he treats people. Does the evidence show him being innocent in how he treats people? Yes, it does. And so I can see that he doesn't understand that he's supposed to be hateful towards Crooks because Crooks is black. However, we have so many little weird kind of cut up quotes that it becomes awkward to read. This is almost feels like pulling random words instead of pulling a phrase. So if you were to pull something like give 'em hell, and pull that phrase, then I would see, dude, yeah, that's a phrase being pulled. The individual words, that feels a little awkward. But I certainly am seeing that he's innocent in how he treats people. So, commentary. What do you think of the commentary on this paragraph? Yeah, this is contrast, if, and it's beautifully set up because look at what it does. If Lenny was like the others, Crooks would have kicked him out. So that you've got that first half. If this were true, if X were true. But now you also have that second half. It's not true, so here's the consequence. But since he saw his pure intentions, comma, he let him stay. So, content-wise, if we are looking at bestest, good, okay, or kind of rotten, where are we in terms of the content? Well, I would say we're a very solid good. We're more than okay because the evidence definitely supports the claims. You have really nice commentary here. I would say it can't go above good because you've got some choppiness here in the evidence that makes it a little bit awkward. So, what's the next thing we're going to grade? Okay, the next thing up is going to be syntax or sentence structure. Here we're starting to get into a little bit of trouble. So I look at sentence beginnings. Lenny is, this is, in fact, he has, instead, such as, more importantly, back in, Crooks, treating, if Lenny. I like the sentence beginnings. Those are very, very good. Sentence lengths. We don't have as much variety in this. We have a lot of short sentences, and that's starting to give it a little bit of a choppy feel because sentences are not connected together. But that certainly would not be enough to really sink the ship, so to speak. And I do see some really nice things here. In terms of what's done well, I've got a coordinating conjunction joining two sentences here. That's nice. I've got a semicolon joining two sentences here. That's nice. I have this DC up front with an IC in back, and that's joined with a comma, and that's nice. And we have another compound sentence here, and that's nice. So we have poor sentence control of sentence lengths, but good control over sentence beginnings. We have some really nice places where I've got compound sentences, but if you look at what I have in red, we have a problem. Right here, this says I'm joining two complete sentences. It's a comma and. Such as a child that is fascinated by their blanket. That is not a complete sentence at all. So that is a sentence fragment right there. And it's a really weird one in that, first of all, people are whose, not that's. And second of all, we have a child, one, and you're using the plural there. So you either have to change this to children and their, or a child and his. But we're getting some weirdness going now in the syntax. We already talked about the fact that we've got another fragment here, and this one is particularly significant because it's in the claim, and the claims are where we set up our ideas. So when there are errors in the claims, they're really going to stand out. I have these weird extra spaces in front of all of these words that are quoted, which is a problem in terms of the structure of the sentence because the sentence is just not put together. You've got an extra space here. In this sentence right here, I've got the DC up front, the IC behind, but then I don't see that comma where I'm joining that DC, that dependent clause, to the independent clause. And the same is true here. I've got the if with the DC up front. This is where my independent sentence starts, and I don't have a comma separating that DC from that IC. So in terms of sentence structure, where are we? Best, good, okay, a little bit rotten. If the problems were just the dropping the commas on the DCICs, I would be annoyed and I would probably say you're okay. But the fact that it's not punctuating DCIC correctly, it's not punctuating quotes correctly, and you have sentence fragments, and that's a skill that you learned very young. This is going to be the real problem here. So, yeah, the syntax is sort of a big deal. Okay, in terms of diction, I've highlighted the good in green, the not so good in red, and you can see there's definitely too many linking verbs, and you've got words in here like a lot and bad that are definitely low level. This would run the risk of hitting that bottom category, except that you do have some really nice higher level vocab. And so that pulls it up a little bit. So in terms of best, good, okay, or kind of rotten, where would this land in terms of diction? Yep, it's okay. Could it be cleaned up? Yes, but it's certainly, you've got those words like evident and fixated that pull it up. So this does not feel like a student that is without any talent linguistically. So this would get an okay. So in terms of proving the point, content and organization, it does. It proves its point. I would, in the final analysis, because that organization, that claim piece kind of got dinged down here on syntax, I would organizationally probably give it a good, and context would give it a good. Syntax, that's not good. And diction, it's okay. So that would land this probably, I think, probably low C's, mid C's. We're somewhere in the C range. But hopefully that gives you a better understanding of what I'm looking for. So go look at your paragraph, identify what mistakes you're making, and here's the trick. I do not want you to rewrite your paragraph. If you would like points back, here's what you have to do. If you want points back, are going to, for each category that you're low on, and there are 4 categories, you are going to label it. So organization is what you did poorly in. You are going to label it organization. You are then going to be very, very specific. I earned this score right here because, and then you have to really insert very specific reasons why you earned that score. Go through your own paper the way I go through papers when I grade it. Pull out specific quotes, pull out specific examples, point out things the way I pointed them out in this workshop. And you tell me, why did you earn that score that you earned? Then you need to tell me, hey, I should have, and then give me very specific things you should have done. What way should you have written it? How should you have done it differently if you wanted to get a good grade? So you can't just take this paragraph and fix what you did wrong. A lot of students want to take their completed paragraph and say, hey, this right here, this was what's wrong. So I'm just going to change this section. I'm going to just change this bit here, and then I can turn it in and get more points. Well, you can't do that. What you're going to have to do is figure out how many categories you want points back in. For each category, you're going to have to say, look, this is where I screwed up. And then you're going to have to put your explanation into this format. So you're going to say, look, in organization, I earned a wow, that's really not good, rotten score. Because this section right here, this is a problem. Here's why it's a problem. Maybe my claim doesn't support my topic sentence. Then I'm going to quote from this section. I'm going to actually pull a quote out and put it into my little response. I am then going to explain what should I have done in this section instead? Why is this so wrong? What should I have done instead of doing this? So you do not get to make a simple little correction of a few words. If you have a few words here that are wrong, you have to write me a response in which you explain how it is that you should be doing it better. Write that up on paper. Do not change your typed copy. When you have your responses written up on paper, hand those in to me, and I will compare your written responses to the paragraphs you turned in, and that is how you can earn some points back.